Hey guys, how's it going? Katsu here. And today we will be talking about the second part of the tutorial on how to create a planetary nebula procedurally in Eevee. So last time we were covering the how to create the shape, the overall shape of our planetary nebula. And today we'll focus more on how to add texture to that nebula. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So on my left, let's just make sure that I have my screencast enabled as always. There you go, perfect. Okay, so uh, during our last video, we covered the shape. Now we will focus on the texture. Now, how do we go about creating the texture for our nebula? What I'm going to do first is that I'm going to set our density strength to 0 for the inner ring and the inner sphere so that I can just focus on the outer ring, which is right about here. And so I will create a noise texture, a color ramp, a multiply node. There we go. Let me just combine them. Now, in order to affect to add the texture to our nebula, we have to combine them via a multiply node between after this subtract node, and I will combine it with this noise texture right here. So whenever I do that and I start messing around with the information in my noise texture, I will start affecting this, as you can see here, right? Okay, so let me, for the outer ring, it's let me share with you the reference image that I'm using for the Helix Nebula. Again, this is only a reference. I'm not trying to 100% recreate this, but it'll give me an idea on what I'm looking for. So let's see here. There you go. So as you can see here, this outer ring, the nebulosity is quite consistent. I can see a little bit of condensed gas, but the overall shape, for example, if I compare it to this inner ring, which has a more detailed texture, this is like more spread out, so to speak. So I am going to try and recreate that effect here. Let me go back to my Blender file. There you go. So what I like to do is that I like to layer different amounts of detail. So in order to do that, I'll start with this first one to create like a general sense of gas. Actually, I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm going to duplicate this right here. And if I click Control Shift right click and then put it over here, I'm going to create a mix node. And so if the factor is on 0, I'm affecting this top part. If the factor is on 1, I'm going to be showing this part right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease this black slider. I would say around here seems fine. Let me see if I can. If I hit N, there you go. And also what I like to do is I like to change my tile size in volumetrics so that I can have more detail of my nebulosity. Because if you leave the tile size, let's say on 8 or on 16 pixels, if you add, for example, detail or you add roughness, you will not be able to see that detail unless you decrease this tile size. Just you need to consider that by doing this and decreasing the tile size, the performance is going to be a little bit hindered, so that you can take that into consideration. For the time being, I'm going to leave it in 4. Now, if you are having a hard time seeing what you're doing, I would suggest increasing this multiply node. This will act as the strength for this part of the texture. So if I change this to 10, for instance, you will be able to see it much more clearly. At the end, you will have to start balancing this. The values of all of your nodes, so that you can have a pretty consistent image, or based on your result. Right now, I'm increasing this on purpose just so that I can more clearly see the detail of my nebulosity. So as I mentioned, if I go into 2, you will see that it's much more detailed than if I leave it, let's say, on 16 pixels, right? So I think for the time being, 4 works fine. So right now, as I mentioned, I'm looking for a consistent look on my nebulosity with just a little bit of detail. So I think this looks fine. And now what I can do is, for instance, I can revert this back to 0.5 so that I can have the complete mix. I can change these two back to 1. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm seeing here that I have a lot of this general nebulosity, so I could decrease these, let's say, to 0.1, and I can increase these, let's say, to 5, perhaps this to 0.3. So you can start just playing with those values just until you see something that you feel comfortable with. And if you change the factors, you can see that you have these general nebulosity, you have the detail, and over here in 0.5, you have a nice mix of those two. Now, I am going to add I'm going to duplicate it again, so that I can increase the texture, the noise texture scale. I am going, again, with Control Shift right click, I'm going to target this mix node so that I can have another one here. I'm going to change the factor to 1 so that I can only see what's going on with this node. And I am going to increase, let's say, the scale up to, I don't know, 30 perhaps. Yeah, I think that looks good. And let me just see right there. I'm going to increase the multiply here so that I can have a better look into what's going on inside here. And I am going to perhaps decrease the roughness, let's say 0.6. And I'm going to add just a wee bit of distortion here. The distortion will, instead of showing the nebulosity like a puffy cloud, it'll add some, oh, you'll see here. So it'll start creating like, what would be a nice, like filaments, for lack of a better word. So I think this looks pretty good here. And again, I am going to revert this back to 1. I'm going to change the factor of my color mix back to 0.5. And finally, I can just take a look here. Now, if I want to see the final result with all of the combinations, I can increase this the prior to the density. I can increase it so that I can have a better look on how this, or a better feel on how this looks. So I think, as you can see here, now I can see some nice strands. This has some, the 3D looks good. The balance of my texture, I'm really happy with this. I think that it adds a very good sense of the nebulosity for this external ring, while also having this interior part of this outer ring pretty dense. So yeah, I like this result so far. So I'm gonna revert this back to, I can leave it like that right now. Okay, perfect. So this, I'm going to move this a little bit higher. I'm going to move this a little bit higher. And I think I'm done with this for the time being. I'm going to decrease the density back to 0. And now I am going to go ahead and start working on this second part. So I'm going to add a strength of 20 for this inner ring, as we can see it here. Perfect. And I am going to move this a little bit down so that I can have more space to work with. And just as above here, I will create again a noise texture color ramp, just as we did before. Oh, noise texture. I'm going to add a color ramp. I'm going to plug it right here. I am going to add a multiply node. Just like so. Perfect. And again, I need to plug this in order to affect the overall, the shape or the texture added to this shape. I am going to add another multiply node right here. And I'm going to plug my texture to this multiply node. Let's give it a minute. There you go. And now if I start working with this, I can start affecting the texture. Now, for the inner ring, I'm going to go back to my reference image again, because I want to show you guys this inner ring, so to speak, has some kind of more detail, and it has some, for lack of a better word, some filaments. So I'm going to try and recreate that, those filaments in this inner ring. Now, in order to do that, there used to be on older or previous versions of Blender a node called, from the Voronoi texture, there was a crackle. It was removed. I found out that there is a way to recreate that effect, and that is by using two Voronoi textures and subtracting them. So I am going to do that. I'm going to create two Voronoi textures. One is going to be F1, the other one is going to be F2. And I'm going to subtract one from the other. I'm going to add my color ramp here. I'm going to add my multiply node here so that I can have the strength. And I'm going to add my mix RGB. There we go. I'm going to put the factor on 1 so that I can look specifically into this. Let me increase the strength to, I don't know, 5 perhaps. What's going on? This is going right here. This is going right here. The factor is fine. Okay. Let me flip the color ramp. There you go. So I'm starting to get something right here. Okay. Let's see here. Or was it F2 and F1? I'm wondering now. Let me flip the color ramp. I think it was F1 and F2. Okay, let's see here. I think this might work, but I'm not sure. As far as I can remember, I think it was F1 and F2. Let's see here. I think I also created a, let me see here real quick. What's going on? I have 3D, F1, F2. I'm subtracting them. Is it the other way around? Or maybe I need another multiply node in order to have, so that I can affect that color ramp. Let's see here. What happens if I start working on this? Let me increase this to white. Let me decrease this a little bit. Uh, 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 1 second. And this is part of what I've been doing um, in order to get these textures right. I have been um, looking into different options, and let me just I'm going to look at one of the other projects that I had created just to make sure that I'm getting this Voronoi prop correctly set up. Um, oh, okay. So I did it only with a distance to edge. Okay, let's see if this works instead of doing both of them. I'm going to do one. I'm going to change it to distance to edge. I don't have this subtract node. I'm going to remove this. There you go. I'm going to reset this and flip it. Okay, perfect. Nice. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. I'm sorry. So I'm starting to get these filaments that I wanted, and I can play with the scale a little bit. And also, in order to have it more of a filament kind of feel, what I can do is add a noise texture before here and add it and plug the factor to the vector, and just decrease the scale back to 2. I'm gonna increase the detail, and I'm going to add just a wee bit of distortion. Perfect. And now we have this really cool effect of the filaments inside this nebula. This is just beautiful the way it looks. I really love this effect that we have created right here. And so once we have this, now I can go ahead and go and let me just close this. Perfect. Change this back to 0.5. Let me look at this one real quick. Okay, we haven't done anything with this. This will be like my general nebulosity. I'm going to put it like real faint, perhaps 8.1. I'm going to change the mix back to 0.5. I'm going to decrease this a little bit. There you go. Now we're talking. Perfect. And I can now go ahead and if I go and I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm going to increase this value. I'm going to do it back to 20. And now we have our outer ring with a consistent feel. I have my inner ring that is showing a very good detail here on what's going on. And finally, I'm going to work on the inner sphere. And this is going to be like the final one. It's really simple because I just want to have a very subtle sphere that shows that the gas expansion. So I'm going to do the same thing. Noise texture, sorry. I'm going to have my noise texture into my color ramp. I'm going to add my multiply node, math node multiply, so that I can have my strength here. There we go. I'm going to duplicate this, put it right here, and mix it with my texture. There we go. I'm going to increase this value. There you go. And now I have this inner sphere. And I want to adjust a little bit of inner texture. So in order to do that, as we've done before, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to mix it. And for this second one, I am just going to add a little bit of structure. Sorry, this is supposed to, yeah, there you go. I'm going to have the scale as it is. I'm going to add some details, some roughness, and perhaps a little bit of distortion, just a little bit. Maybe decrease this. There you go, perfect. Okay, I really like how this looks. And I'm going to increase this to 1, this to 1. I'm going to revert this back to 0.5, and now I can just go ahead and decrease this value perhaps to 0.1, a little bit less, 0.05. 0.03, there you go. Perfect. Now we have this beautiful beautiful texture of my nebula, as you can see here. And I think that'll cover today's video, guys. I hope you like how this is turning out. I really look how this is looking so far. So just to summarize what we've done in this second part, we added texture to our nebula by adding a series of noise textures with color ramp. This multiply will help us balance out the intensity for each of the different parts of the texture. And right here, as I mentioned, in order to affect or to add this texture specifically to the shape, we use a multiply node in order to combine them. And finally, you can use, as I mentioned before, this multiply nodes right here before the principal volume in order to affect the overall density for that part of the nebula. So I think this is it for today's video, guys, for this second part. I really hope you like how this is turning out. Again, if you like this video, please consider giving up a like and leaving a comment on how you are, what you think about this video. And on the next part, on part 3 of this video, we'll finish it up by adding some color to our planetary nebula. So once again, thank you very much for watching, guys. Have a great day. This is Kaetsu, and I'm out. Bye.